put this off any longer because we know you're all anxious to start using the budget spreadsheet and start completing your MOU negotiations and get your numbers in order. So we're going to proceed as best we can today without Bethany. So just bear with me as I'm running the whole control board here today, but we will muddle through. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So just a very quick overview. We're going to talk about the general context of why we're doing this, our timeline. We have a new outcome report for negotiations that we'll talk about briefly. We'll talk about that requirement in the Act about, or the regulations rather, than for affiliate and specialized centers. We'll talk FTEs, full-time equivalents, for those of you that might be a new acronym too. And then we're going to talk about specific parts of the spreadsheet, such as our shared costs, costs that are specific to a single center, and then costs that are system-wide across your local areas. We have some new guidance for how to handle those, and we've built in some things into the spreadsheet that provide a little bit more level of detail for us all to have a clearer picture of what's going on. So we hope you all find that helpful in helping all of the partners understand what they're being charged for and what they're contributing to as we go through the MOU process. And then we'll finish up with a little Q&A. So with that said, here are just a few reminders about the context of our process here. We talked about these things before, but if anyone is new to the process or new to the system here in this webinar, these items do have implications for the one-stop operating budget spreadsheet that we're going to look at in detail today. So while we all know the MOUs are good for 3 years, as we all know, the budgets have to be negotiated annually. And so we updated the template to be used for the PY18 MOUs. So the template you used last year is gone. We'll not use that again. For PY18, we'll use the one in front of us. Chances are very good we'll have tweaks to make to this and make it better for PY19. But for now, the one we're looking at today is the one you should use. You all know that infrastructure funding requirements were extended to apply to affiliate and specialized centers for this PY18 program year that starts July 1. So that means that we've added tabs to help capture costs that are incurred and shared costs that are incurred for those affiliate or specialized centers, not just the comprehensive centers. And then you may have heard some sensitivity about how costs of the one-stop operator are reflected in the annual budget, especially under very different scenarios where perhaps a consortium model is in place to cover that or a single entity model is used. So we've adapted the spreadsheet to help account for those different kinds of operating where the one-stop operator is in place in various fashions and how the cost of those operators are shared. The timeline here is from our supplemental guidance. This is the same as last year. Negotiations officially underway January 1 and scheduled to end on April 15th. And at that point, everyone needs to submit their status report to me at the website or at the web address, the email address listed there. It's weoplans-mous@illinoisworknet.com. And then similar to past years, if anyone has indicated they have not been able to come to an agreement, then the state remediation team will work with the partners in that local area to help them avoid an impasse and expedite an agreement. And then as you all know, if all else fails and we cannot come to an agreement by July 1, then the state funding mechanism kicks in and the governor gets to set who pays what and what rates. So we've all talked about that being undesirable, and fortunately everyone has been able to avoid that thus far. So I am confident in predicting that everyone across the state will be able to continue that trend. Okay, this form is the new annual budget negotiation status form. It is because these have to occur every year. We need a way to indicate whether any local areas are having issues or at risk of declaring an impasse. So this is a new form that's provided in the supplemental guidance. That was the preliminary guidance was actually already issued, so this form is in there. As we just talked about, it's due April 15th. Send it in to me, and it will help us figure out, what are the issues flying that are preventing coming to an agreement, and which state-level partners need to be involved in the process to help you all resolve whatever issues might be out there. And a fillable version of this form is available for download at the WIOA implementation portal on Illinois workNet. Okay. So the big question that's new as far as MOUs and sharing costs and operation locally is the issue of affiliates and other non-comprehensive centers. State policy that will define what those are is still currently under development. In the meantime, you should go by the guidance in the supplemental governor's guidelines that speaks to infrastructure costs must be shared proportionally, and it applies to any service location that a local board designates as an affiliate or specialized center. So for purposes of our MOU this coming year, any service location that LWIB has officially designated as an affiliate or specialized center has to be included in this spreadsheet. So the policy group of the IWIB is working on that definition. It will be issued when it's ready, but it will very likely not be ready in time for you to complete your MOUs. So at this point, you should go by the supplemental governor's guidelines for dealing with this issue. If anyone has questions about that as you go through the MOU negotiation process, please let the state team know, and we can help you work through whatever those issues might be. Okay. So what that means is, and I've spoken to this a little bit already, but if you'll see in the spreadsheet, we're going to go into this into some detail. We have multiple centers set up so that whatever your arrangement might be, we have plenty of places here for you to enter those shared costs. So diving into the spreadsheet itself, first of all, I'd like to thank those of you who helped did some initial beta testing of preliminary versions of this sheet. We were able to identify a good number of things that needed further development or for further thinking through. And I think because of that effort and those of you that participated in that, we have a really good final product here. That being said, there's always the chance that someone will find something obscure in here that isn't working the way we intended for it to. So if you run across something like that and you're kind of scratching your head asking why is it doing that, please let us know, and we can look into it and we can find out if maybe it's operator error or maybe if there's something that needs to be fixed or tweaked in the underlying spreadsheet. So we are very much not assuming that this is 100% perfect. We hope it is, but we understand that someone might find something, and don't be shy about letting us know because we want to take care of those issues as soon as possible. So that's the big disclaimer for the spreadsheet. We did revise this considerably to deal with new cost-sharing requirements applying to all those affiliate centers. And just for clarity of terms, if you're dealing with official Department of Labor language on the infrastructure funding agreement, the IFA, this sheet serves as that IFA. Okay. And that is an official part of the MOU document. This, along with the narrative, packaged together constitutes your MOU. We do have two new categories of costs this year, and I'll show them to you in the sheet in a moment. Relatively simple. One is shared delivery system costs specific to one center. Like, for instance, you might have a resource room specialist only in one center. So that's a cost that would be identified just in that one particular center. And then we also have shared costs that might apply to all the centers in an area, such as local board staff. They supply support and provide support for all of the system, not just one particular center. So that's an example of a system-wide cost that would be captured in the spreadsheet. These sheets are based on FTEs. That, according to the governor's guidelines, is the recommended way to allocate costs. If you're using a different method, be sure to uncheck the box up at the top of each center's cost, and that will turn off the FTE functions and calculations and allow you to do your own thing with that. Okay, so we've made other technical improvements to the budget spreadsheet based on everyone's feedback throughout the process last year, and again from our beta testers early in this year's process. And overall, we tried to incorporate all of your suggestions, and these all are intended either to provide clarity, provide additional information, or improve the ease of operating. I hope we accomplished that. Time will tell as you all start working in this, but we just wanted everyone to know that we were listening to your suggestions and comments, and we did everything we could to try to make this as easy as possible to use and build in the additional functionality that was required. So, in a nutshell, we were wanting to make things more flexible so you could identify the costs and how they're shared across the partners, make it more clear who's paying or incurring the cost for which items, and then capture all of the costs of the one-stop delivery system, even if some partners might not be sharing in all of the costs, because we realize that's a reality in some places. So we tried to make the sheet a little more flexible to allow you to capture that sort of arrangement. So as we've all talked about, I don't think this is news to anyone, when you are thinking about your FTEs and how to account for your costs, you can have three possible ways of delivering services. On-site staff, whether they're program staff or contractors that are actually present at the center. You could have cross-trained staff where another program is sufficiently trained to be a proxy or act in the stead of another program and help individuals that come in off the street and provide services for that program. And then the third method is direct linkage, where meaning someone can come into the center and through technology access services as if that helpful individual or helpful process was there in the center with them, or they could access those services within a reasonable amount of time. And then also the LWIB chair can designate the one-stop operator as that resource to provide staff that's cross-trained. So again, that's a local decision and how you all want to handle that. So in FTEs, here's an example of the cross-train process, and I'll show you this example here in just a second on the sheet itself, but we've tried to identify a clean way to show who is the contributing partner that is covering the services and who is the partner that's receiving that service, and how many hours or how much effort is being donated from one program to another. and I'll show you how that works here very shortly. Of course, remember, some places have many more people working under the roof that are providing WIOA services. So remember, for purposes of your MOU, we're only considering staff that provide WIOA services. Okay? So you may have, for example, a regional office that might have 20 people that are there that are not providing services to people walking in off the street. They're doing other stuff. Those folks aren't counted. Keep in mind, too, that while FTEs are based on staff that is there or providing services, it's not exactly the same as counting heads. If you look at this graphic across the bottom, these essentially are all the same thing. Whether you have one position that spends all her time dedicated to one-stop services, or you have two positions that spend half of their time on one-stop services, or you could have three positions that each spend 1/3 of their time providing one-stop services. In all of those cases, that's one FTE. Okay. So don't fall into the trap of just counting heads and seats. It's how much effort are those positions providing to support services at the one-stop. And then also, if anyone is using direct linkage, the staff that is off-site but is available to provide services through direct linkage, their time should count. Those positions should count in your spreadsheet. So you account for those in the far right column in the spreadsheet so that you can see how those services are covered and who's covering them. Okay, so let's pull up the spreadsheet now and go through some examples. So I am going to start sharing my screen. Whoop, wrong screen. So let me stop that and select my other monitor. There we go. Okay. Okay, can everyone see that now? Whoop, I need to... Hold on. Technical difficulties here. I've lost my window. Okay. Okay, I think we're getting there. I'm sorry, I'm seeing my screen, but not the webinar room. There we go. Paint.
Hey, Mike, your your Excel sheet is showing on the webinar.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. So, sorry for the technical difficulties there. The joys of working with two monitors. Okay. So, we go to tab C. Okay, so here we see tab C, full-time equivalents for Center 1. One of our naming conventions is if the cells are this yellow color, if you see my mouse working around, that's a cell you can enter information into. So you could put your local workforce area information here, LVA 99, and you put in the city with center name if you've got more than one center in one city. So we have a pre-populated screen here, and column C, and I'm going to magnify this a little bit so everyone can see it better, hopefully. In column C, these are the FTEs that are on site from each partner. So that's relatively straightforward. So you can see across these how that's laid out. In this example, we are assuming that Title 1B is providing some cross-train support on behalf of TAA. So the way that's shown is Title 1B is named in column D as the contributing partner. And the amount of FTEs they're contributing is shown in column E. We've allowed room for if perhaps two partners are contributing time on behalf of another partner to do that twice for any particular partner. If for some reason you have more than two partners that are helping cover another partner, let us know and we can adapt this to account for that. Okay. So in column H, after you've accounted for all of the on-site and the sharing of cross-trained staff, column H, highlighted here, gives you all of the on-sites. Then, in column J, if you have any off-site services that are provided via direct linkage, those FTEs would be entered here. And then in column L, it simply totals those up across the way. And then these amounts are carried over into the subsequent center cost sheet. And you'll notice down across the bottom here, we have FTE Center 2, shared cost Center 2. FTE 3, shared cost 3, and so on. So you would fill out the FTEs for each individual designated center, and when you fill out this FTE sheet, those FTEs get populated into the subsequent shared costs, and it will automatically calculate how shared cost should be calculated and allocated out to all the partners based on your FTE methodology. Okay. Olivia, I need to switch back to the PowerPoint. Okay. And after all that demonstration, that allowed us to skip a couple of slides. So when you were talking about infrastructure costs that are specific to a center, this is part one of our shared cost sheets. Rows 14 through 53 indicate what each partner owes based on that FTE commitment and allocation. Then below that, rows 57 and 59 are where you enter what each partner pays and the type of contribution. And again, the yellow cells are unlocked so you can customize the items and so forth. Column B is unlocked so you can enter the budgeted amounts for each line item. And we added a column C so that you can identify which partner is incurring the cost, meaning which partner are all the other partners making a payment to. So you've got one partner that's the leaseholder. My guess is the landlord is not going to want and not going to bill each partner for their individual share. The leaseholder is going to have to be making the payment, and the other partners most likely would be paying the leaseholder partner. So again, how you all work that out is up to you, but we've put this column in here so you can identify who should be receiving the money from the rest of the partners. Okay. So with that, I need to start sharing the spreadsheet again. I'll get this down by the time we're done with this webinar. There we go. All right. So flipping over to our center cost sheet, here's where all the fun happens. So again, we put in this new column for the partner responsible for the payment. So in this example, we've pre-populated this with dummy dollar amounts and agencies. So in this case, IDS is paying for lots of stuff. May or may not be the case from center to center, but in this example, that's what we're doing. So in column C, you enter that partner that's responsible for that payment, and you enter the amount budgeted by line item in the column B. So if you've got a total lease cost of $100,000 for this center, you enter $100,000 in column B for this line. If you have multiple partners that are sharing that lease cost, you could add a line or use the lines down here that are accessible to you and add in your lease cost 2, put it in a dollar amount and the partner. You'd have to be careful, though, to break out how much of the lease each partner is responsible for. So out of that, if it was $100,000, if IDS has, say, $70,000 and then partner B has $30,000, let's say partner B, that's how you would show it. So you still have that $100,000 cost built in, but you're showing who is bearing how much of that particular burden. So. Also, there is a little bit of a trick I want to make sure everyone is aware of. At any time, if you are going in and changing or adding in specialized line item labels, you need to do it in tab B of the total shared costs. So all of, let me get up here to that section. This sheet totals up all of the budgeted amounts and allocated costs across all of the centers. And this sheet was the master in which all of the center sheets was built from. So all the line items are the same in the rest of the sheets as they are here. So that's set up by a formula. So if you change it here, that change will be reflected in subsequent, well, all of the centers actually. So the reason we did it that way is because you might not have exactly the same line items needed at more than one center. So in this example, Center 1 has an asbestos abatement issue of $2,500 that all the partners are helping cover. Another center somewhere has fish tank cleaning as an expense. That's not relevant to Center 1, but it is to another center. But if we just had you put new items in row 21 across all the centers, all of those costs would get commingled, and you would have no idea without going to each individual sheet what dollar amount was truly allocated to what activity. So by doing it this way, it forces that title to be the same across all the sheets. So if it's not relevant to any of the centers, you just don't enter a dollar amount in that center. So you can see how it works here, going back to the total one. Overall, across all the centers, we have asbestos abatement, $2,500. Fish tank cleaning, $500. Now we can see that in Center 1, that $2,500 is shown here, but nothing for fish tank cleaning. But that does show up in Center 2. But that center also had nothing going on with asbestos abatement. Just by making the titles work that way, it keeps the data clean and clear and hopefully helps everyone understand better what's going on in each center. So that was the one kind of nuance to be mindful of, that if you're in any of these centers and you want to tweak your line items to add in additional items, you've got to go back and do that in tab B. Okay. So then, let's see here. Let me roll down and we'll show you in in rows 69 through 74. Here's where we have specific costs that are specific to a center. Okay. And that's not infrastructure costs, shared system delivery costs. Okay. So, up above in Part 1, here's where we have, these are all this green section, Part 1, shared infrastructure costs. Part 2, shared delivery system costs, and in this case, specific only to this center. And great example of that is a one-stop operator, one-stop center reception, those kinds of things. These are costs allocated to this center, or indicative of this center, not the others. For the one-stop operator, this is a major change in the sheet this year. DOL asked us to provide this information and collect this information, and hopefully this makes things easier for you all as well. But there are several different ways to handle one-stop operator costs. So if you go to cell B and C76, this merge cell, there's a drop-down box which allows you to select, do we have a single entity, or do we have a consortium, or are we doing something else that doesn't fit exactly into either of those two buckets? So in any case, whichever you select, please explain the methodology that you're using down in the notes section here in row, in this thing following row 116, notes on the one-stop operator. While we're down here, I'll just highlight, please use these boxes to help explain what's going on. So that way, if a particular situation has a nuance, you can categorize that here, so it's documented and all the partners will have seen this, and this is where you can say, okay, this is what the partners have agreed to do in this particular situation. So this is just space for you to add further information for your local partners and also for the review team here at the state to help explain what's going on if the situation merits that. So for our example here in this center, they are using a single entity to be the one-stop operator, and they are allocating the costs to all of the partners. So just like you've done with the cost up above, you would enter that amount here, and these formulas allocate that cost out to all of the partners. If all partners happen not to be sharing in the cost, you would enter the dollar amount in row 79. And you can see this row is yellow all the way across. That is so the costs are not automatically calculated and allocated out to everyone, but you would manually enter the amount of the contributing partners, from each of the contributing partners, that is going to cover the cost of the one-stop operator. So I'll flip over to our Center 2 sheet and show you how that looks in this model. So you can see, using the consortium model, the dollar amount of the cost is entered in row 79, and then the specific amount that's going to be charged to each of the contributing partners is manually entered across this row. Okay. Jump back to our main slide. Then, as always, we want to account for how are the costs being covered. So in the section down below, in this case, rows 84 through 88, here's where you enter the amounts that are being contributed by each partner. So what you've got to do is look up to see, okay, how much for infrastructure costs are being allocated out, and then you manually enter the contribution. Are they making a cash contribution, non-cash, third party in kind, whatever it might be? You hand key these amounts into these yellow cells up to the amount of the amount that is owed by each partner. A word on rounding error. We played around with several ways to reduce rounding error, and it was beyond our capacity in the time we had to do it in a way that didn't create other problems that were more unpalatable than having a few odd cents here and there. So our suggestion is, don't sweat the rounding of pennies. This is an overall budget, and you're using it to figure out, big picture-wise, what partners owe for relatively big dollar amounts. So, however you all choose to handle that is fine by us. You could manually enter an amount to take care of it. You could allocate the odd cents to one particular partner. It's all up to you, but just keep in mind, don't spend a whole lot of effort with that because it's not a great return on investment. There's no need to do lots of hand-wringing and teeth gnashing over 4 cents. If anybody has any issues with that as you go along, or how that might impact your reconciliation process, let us know here at the state, and we will work with you to try to figure that out. But all in all, the general advice is don't sweat the pennies. Okay, let's compare how some FTE scenarios might look in different places. So let's go back to Center 1 here. This center is one where we have said that Title 1 is contributing a little bit of time, 0.25 FTEs specifically, for TAA. So in this example, we've assumed that there are 3 full-time staffers in Title 1 at this center. So the thing to keep in mind is any time that is contributed to another partner is deducted from the starting point that partner had. So in this case, if they have 3 people there, but they're allocating part of that time to someone else, then that donation has to come off the amount that is dedicated to their own program, because you can't double count that FTE. Okay. So over here in our other center, they might have 3 people from Title I in this center, but they are providing an additional person that spends 75% of their time donating and covering TAA activities. So it could be a case where that could be 3.25 if the rest of that person's services is covering one-stop services for Title I, or it might simply be 3 if they've got another person that's covering 3/4 of their time for TAA, but the other 25% of their time is not dedicated to the one-stop services at all. So there are lots of different ways that can be represented, and we've tried to set this up to allow flexibility in all the different ways that those might happen. So let's also look at how one-stop operator costs might be allocated out. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but in this case, you've got $100,000 for one-stop operator costs, and that by no means is meant to indicate that we think that's a reasonable amount. That's just a nice round number. Okay. But you can see here in row 77 that amount is allocated out to everybody, and then down below we have a row 87 here that we'd like to capture. What is the contribution from members? Oh, sorry, wrong line. About went down a bad path there. So if the parties are contributing to the one-stop operator, if it's cash, then it would come in these lines. Non-cash in these lines. If they are doing it through a consortium, then it would be in this special line. But otherwise, they could capture these costs in either the cash or non-cash lines. Flipping over to a consortium model, you can see here again, the costs are not allocated out to everybody, only to the partners that are contributing. And row 87 is where you capture that contribution. So let's go back now to the sheet, or to the window. There we go. Okay, so I was able to zoom through a lot here while we were in the document. You'll be able to download this PowerPoint, so you'll have all these references. I just want to go through this real quickly and make sure to highlight anything. Okay, here are, this screen is highlighting these different categories of rows that we've been talking about, and we'll give you some guidance on how to select the OSO model and where to plug in the costs associated with the one-stop operator. Again, here's how to use the notes section I showed you earlier. And then in part 3, I'll go back to this. This is only on the shared tab, tab B. Because again, all the costs in all these other tabs are specific to a single center. It's only in tab B, the total shared costs of all centers, that all of these costs are totaled up. So this is where we have a part 3 that allows you to enter costs that are incurred by the partners and shared by the partners, but they are not specific to a single center, and they are essentially working for the benefit of all the centers. Okay, we talked about this. And here, just where you can enter your own line items. So we just talked about that. Okay, and again, here are the types of contributions towards shared infrastructure costs. Your cash is basically you're writing a check or making an interagency transfer between the partners. You could be doing non-cash contributions. That means it has to be a cost that is recognized and agreed upon by everyone, as fairly valued, and it's offsetting an actual cost that has been identified on your budget. And then third-party in-kind, it's where you may have an outside entity, such as a landlord or another a government entity, whatever it might be, that is providing something of value that is on a non-cash basis. And also partners can contribute to local delivery system costs in the same fashion. In this case, you can use in-kind staffing, whereas under infrastructure, you cannot use in-kind staffing to offset your costs, but it is allowable under shared local delivery system costs. So that is a very quick run through of our new budget template. I'd be happy to take any questions. And okay, Debbie, if all costs had to be allocated to all partners, how can one-stop operator only be allocated to some partners? You are correct that all costs should be allocated to all partners. However, we know there are instances where some partners, for reasons that are endemic only to their local area, have come to a mutual agreement that they will not, or they're not making not every partner might be making a cash contribution. So how that is all worked out is between those partners, but we're trying to find a way to capture who actually is covering the cost of the one-stop operator. So that's why we built this in. It's not to say that is, alleviates partners from the responsibility of sharing that cost, but the intent was to allow flexibility in displaying and showing how the partners actually were providing those services and covering those costs. And we can follow up with that if anyone has any further questions on that one after the fact. I have a question from LB2. Would physical staff count towards FTE since they don't deliver services to customers? Typically not. You got to think, though, in terms of, are they providing services that are supporting the one-stop? So there might be a case where the physical staff is providing some kind of support, and that would be under the system delivery costs. So again, that's a center by center, LWIA by LWIA determination. So if there are any questions on that, we can follow up with you on that as well. One-stop operator costs are simply the cost of the contract for the one-stop operator. So, all the one-stop operators have to be procured. So whatever the value of that procurement is the value of the one-stop operator. So if an organization is getting $100,000 to serve as the operator for a center for that year, that's your $100,000 amount. That would be entered into the sheet. And Kirkland, I'm not sure about your question. I'll have to follow up with you after the fact on that one. Oh, and then Janice Taylor Brown has a good point. If you are excluding staff from the FTEs, then their space, is not part of the equation either. So depending on how you're factoring in all of your costs, just keep that in mind that, for instance, let's go back to that example where an agency might have 20 people under the same roof, but only 5 of them are providing services in the one-stop. You're not going to count all the space that those 15 people that are not part of the one-stop as being part of the rent for this. Remember, the MOU sheet is about shared costs among the partners to operate the center that is providing WIOA services to customers coming in off the street. So if a partner has lots more staff there that are doing things not related to one-stop services, those FTEs and that space doesn't get counted in the mix for your cost allocation plan. Thank you, Janice. Janice has a clarification. Make sure everyone sees that cash contributions are showing payments, either writing a check or interagency exchange between the partners. Non-cash contributions can reflect payments like that are making directly to vendors. And then we have a question from IWP. Yeah, I mean, the costs that are associated with the one-stop operator are very much center-specific and LWIA-specific. So it's whatever you built into that mix, is what you would count. So like I tried to make a point of saying earlier, $100,000 was entered just because it's a nice round number. Your number might be 5,000. It could be more, it could be less. So don't think that if your situation, you have a much smaller number that's inappropriate, because it might be exactly appropriate for what your situation is. Oh, and hi, Kathy Lively. So I hope that brought more clarity than confusion. Like I said, we have taken every effort we could think of to try to debug this and make it as user-friendly as possible. And hopefully everyone will have no issues with it. But on the odd chance something does come up, please let us know, and we will fix it if necessary. And if any changes are made, we will issue an update to the field and let you know that an issue was found and it's been addressed, and provide a new template for you all to use. So LWIA 2 is asking, when will all the forms be available?
Your microphone has been turned on. Your microphone has been turned on.
I'm going to have to defer to that one with KEB. Bethany was ready to have it issued, but I think she wanted the staff at KEB to be able to take one last look at it before we send it out the door. So, Christy, do you have any knowledge on what you all have come up with?
Yeah, I hope to be able to distribute it this afternoon, Mike.
I'm sorry, you broke up on me. I couldn't quite hear that.
We hope to distribute the document this afternoon.
Okay, so KEB says this afternoon. If the review doesn't come up with anything that I may have missed in my final look through.
Hello, Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My question was, say we have a contract with a center for, say, $600,000, but in that amount it includes support services, work experience, and OJT. Should we subtract those direct costs from that in order to get the one-stop operated costs?
Yeah.
We should, right. Okay.
Yeah, because those are training services.
Yes, pass
So you would want those captured in the training lines, not the admin support lines.
So their salaries, fringes, indirect costs, and things like that should be included.
If all costs that are associated with delivering one-stop supportive service, or I don't want to say supportive services, but delivering stops that support the one-stop would be included, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I see Chuck Dooley is typing. He may have some additional advice on how to count those costs. Right. So Chuck confirms that only the one-stop operator costs that are in the agreements would be considered in these spreadsheets. Thank you, Chuck. Okay, well, we're coming up on our time, so being mindful of everyone's time. If anyone has any questions, here's the last call. But again, I appreciate everyone's patience as I worked through this alone today. Thanks to Olivia at Illinois WorkNet for helping keep it from crashing, and Christy at KEB for your help as well. So, going once. Okay. Well, thank you all. Have a great afternoon, and be looking for the spreadsheet to be distributed very shortly. And if you have any questions, please let us know after you start digging around in them. And take care, everyone. Have a great day.